I remember as a youth, my main influences spiritually up until I moved to Virginia were basically what I saw and what I then learned, growing up, what I read about. My own practical experience, I was Italian, I was from New Jersey, so I'm raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, Italian. Nothing happened. I'm okay. They didn't, I wasn't scarred. If anything, it taught me an appreciation for the pageantry of religions, rituals and things like that they give, because I was an altar boy, and me and some kids from the neighborhood, when we go to church, we would have the incense, on a stick with the chain, the incense burner. It was burning the good incense, it wasn't the cheap sticks. It was good frankincense over coals. And have all the smoke. And I remember being very attracted to the smoke, to the frankincense. Wearing robes, going up and reading the Bible, things like that, man. It was really, really nice. I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it until I did it, And then there was a point where I made my confirmation. I was making, they have these different stages when you're a Catholic, And the confirmation stages, you're supposed to be able to make your own decision whether you want to, be a Catholic, follow through. First, when you're a baby, you're baptized, you're a baby, so you have no say in the matter. And then later on, when you make your Holy Communion, you're still a little kid, so, you don't really understand the faith fully, you're following along, so you don't, again, it's not of your own volition, but when you make your confirmation, it's supposed to be of your own volition. And I was going to Sunday school and reading the Bible, doing all these things, tests on the apostles. And, they're supposed to get you to understand the Bible, understand God. At the end of it, that they had me understand it. I didn't agree with a lot of the dogma, maybe just because I was a rebellious teen. I don't know really what to say. I was a preteen, but still, I didn't want to do it, And so when they said that everybody was going around, and they're like, "So Aldo, you got to do the confirmation?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't think this is for me." What? No. Get on the phone, Mr. Stuff, no, can I come? Da, 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 da. Next thing you know, I'm in there, and they got the priest, the nuns, one of the higher ups too. I don't know if it was a bishop or whatever, whoever the local head guy was. He was there. My parents were there. My dad's looking at me like, "Yo, you're going to do this, right?" I'm like, "Okay, I'll do it. Nobody said make me do it, but I knew it wasn't for me. And just because I was being forced to do it reinforced that, the Catholicism wasn't for me. Now the problem was more or less, your interest tends to go the other way now, you know what I mean? Like if I didn't really find this attractive, I'm starting to find the dark side more attractive. So as a kid, you start reading all the books, all the books that you can get your hands on at the local bookshop, at the mall, There was a copy of the Necronomicon paperback that you could get at the shop. And, it had a neat story. And I don't know how much of it is real or not, because it's supposed to be this Babylonian epic and a bunch of spells on Babylonian, mystical arts. All I know is what I learned from it is some of the stuff was true as far as there's a story that goes along with this book. When you read the story, it talks about these gods like Marduk and things like that. And those are real gods that they worshipped in Babylon that you can, study in history. You know what I mean? Still on temple walls in Iran, Iraq. That part of it is real. So then they just carried on that story with some blah, 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 clever publishing. And then they got a bunch of heavy metal kids just want to check that shit out. And the Anton LaVey, read Anton LaVey, Satanic Bible and stuff like that, And the one neat thing about Satanism is after you read that book, Satanists just become extroverted atheists with some pageantry, because Christianity reviles themselves, so they kind of step into the roles as being, revolting. But that being said, their philosophy is basically all material driven, all ego-driven. Do what thou wilt is the whole law. Aleister Crowley, I remember reading a lot about Aleister Crowley, things like that. And other little cool things that you can get your hands on at the local library. there wasn't really no occult bookshop until I found one. Until I found one in Philadelphia. Then I found actually two, and they were like right next to each other, which was kind of neat. When I started going there, and then I started getting the real stuff on crystals and voodoo, Haitian voodoo, got my first voodoo necklace from Haiti and some different tchotchkes that, can't say about what. It was very interesting, reading the Bhagavad Gita more, being more of a rebel, and I wasn't ready to surrender, to the truths that were in this book. So, just kind of accepted some of the teachings, and again, Buddhism, read a lot of Buddhism. That's when I started to mellow out again, from the, more, like I said, when you're a kid, you want magic, you want things to happen right now. And of course, it doesn't work like that. And you gotta learn, you gotta learn by being a fool sometimes and being foolish, until you realize what's practical and what real is, and when you realize what's real truth and reality, it takes a lot of the pressure off in life. But not to say that you shouldn't work according to your natural proclivity. You obviously should. But, by the time I graduated high school, my spiritual wanderings were more esoteric, philosophical. I was more of a, like I said, a hippie, Grateful Dead traveler, eating a lot of mushrooms and acid and smoking ganja and seeing nature as its source of everything. I can remember once I took this acid trip. I think I don't even remember, 3-6 hits. It was a lot of acid at the time. They were heavy blotters, double dose, whatever. But it was really good acid. And I went back in the woods, like I grew up in the woods. Used to do a lot of camping. A lot of the soul searching went on in the pine barrens, in the forest, There was a spot in the woods that had a stream and some sand dunes and forest all around us. And it was me and a couple buddies, and I ate this acid, and I sat down next to the stream, and I literally, you could see through the water, and you could see the seaweed rising up, and you could see the reflection of the trees on the flat water, and then of course there was the trees, and it was such a intense peak, and any drop of pine needle or something would hit the water and cast ripples in the still water, and the ripples would sometimes reach the shore, sometimes they would, and it gave me this whole view on the universe, how we're just microcosms and everything is a cause and reaction of something else, Basically, I was learning like the law of karma, in a way that built material nature to the point to where it is today. I saw everything, I kind of sat by this pond for a while, the stream for a while, and it was very, very intense. I don't know if I can properly relate how intense and life-changing this experience was. It was so life-changing that I used to be in computer school in high school. I took a technical school half day thing, and so I was in a computer information process. I used to be able to program in like 5 different languages, I think, at the time in the 1980s. Basic, Fortran, COBOL, RPG2, and Pascal, I think we started to learn at one point. And I did this for like 3 years, like a summer class, and 2 years during high school. I was president of the Future Business Leaders of America. That's no shit. It was an interesting time, man. But I remember one time sitting in this class, I think I ate some acid during school that day, which I don't recommend children, but this happens. And it just blew my mind. Like, I was in this sterile environment with these computers and the flickering fluorescent lights and the rows of computers with the black and green. Back then, the IBM PC XTs was the computer. I couldn't I just couldn't. I just couldn't see my happiness being derived from it. I could see it being a means to an end. I could see the money being made. I could see a future programming. I could see where it was going. At the time, I was already programming a lot of basic, making video games and things like that, and pirating in the '80s, man. I was blue chip the pirate at the time. I had this little bulletin board service they used to call them. That was a website back then, BBS, and mine was called the Pirate Ship. And we would trade video games, and the video games it would be like, you have to crack the page and be able to remove the copyright, whatever code. This was back in the 80s. It was very, very, very simple. Today, it's a whole new game. I have no clue. The fact that I'm doing this is a testament to how easy modern technology is, So, that being said, I'm just down with knowledge. I mean, I read Dianetics, by L. Ron Hubbard. I was just reading a lot, The main thing was, like, when I was a kid, growing up in my house, we lived in a 3-bedroom house, and there was my parents had 3 sons. So my 2 younger brothers shared a room, and then my room was supposed to be my dad's office, his den. So he was a carpenter, so he built these beautiful bookshelves and had filled it up with encyclopedias and books. And again, like I said, my uncle had given us, when he joined the Hare Krishna movement, big Bhagavad Gita, and we had a Bhagavad Gita up there, and Dianetics, and some other books on spirituality, of course, the Bibles and stuff like that, encyclopedias, like I said. And, it was another weird thing is my uncle, when he joined the Hare Krishnas, he gave my dad all his record albums, So my dad, from what I understood, his record albums was Frank Sinatra, stuff like that, like, the Italians listen to. And then he had these other albums that were like the Rolling Stones, Jethro Tull, like Cheech and Chong, like really heavy, Pink Floyd, hippie albums, and it was these albums I grew up on as a kid, and not like, I didn't know what half these things meant, you know what I mean? Like, especially when it came to their comedy albums, we had Red Fox, Bill Cosby, George Carlin, and Cheech and Chong, I remember these guys. Bill Cosby jokes I always got, Bill Cosby would tell jokes about Noah's Ark and all these other things that I got, And Red Fox, I didn't get. His pace was off when I was a kid. It wasn't until older that I really, fell in love with Red Fox. I knew him from Sanford and Son, And George Carlin was hilarious because he cursed. But I liked George Carlin's earlier stuff when he was doing the characters, the weatherman, hippy dippy weatherman, things like that, And George Carlin Takes Off and Puts On was the name of one album. And then there was George Carlin's 7 Dirty Words, and that's why that album was great, 7 dirty words you can't say on television. And hey, this album changed my whole view, especially when it came to the Catholic stuff. That was when I started questioning the Catholicism that I was going to. So then it came to Cheech and Chong. I loved the fact that it was sketch comedy on an album, but I didn't get any of the jokes. Again, not until I started smoking ganja and dropping acid, tripping in court. The only joke that I got on these Cheech and Chong albums was like, Dave's not here. But I love the one album, it looked like the 2 chicks in a car, you slide out the album sleeve and the whole door was full of ganja and stuff. Hey, who knows, later on in life, these things, it's how I live now. Point being that my spirituality was very hippie, it was very just spiritual by the time I went to Richmond, Virginia. I went through all these other phases, which are still a part of me. I still know these things. Yeah, man, I can remember stories, man, especially when I was reading tarot cards and stuff like that, blowing people away with my pinpoint accuracy. While half the time was, your past and present was kind of obvious when you were friends of mine or family of mine, So I would be able to adapt what the cards say, what I know about these people's lives. But it was with strangers, it was a little bit harder. The death card came up, and she started crying. And I'm like, no, it doesn't mean death necessarily. It just means like, be prepared for a change. And she starts talking about her husband's cancer and shit like that. It's like, you know. So I stopped reading tarot cards after that because I realized it affects people. Unless you really just stick to trying to make people happy, people don't like change. They want to just hear good news. And there's always good news. There's good news. And the good news is, and this is what I at least learned before I went to Virginia, is like, the one main thing that will set anybody on a spiritual path, and that is that you are not the body. You're not the body. You're a soul having a human experience. Not a human having a spiritual experience. You're a soul. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. And which is very fortunate too, especially now. On this planet, which I've come to realize. 8,400,000 species of animal, and human species is the one that you can at least begin to attain self-realization. And that is the topic for the next one, because, like I said, when I graduated high school, 1 week after I graduated high school, I had a big party, dropped acid, had a keg, partied in the woods, and then I went off to Richmond, Virginia to become an adult. I don't know if it worked out too well, but hey, it was fun. It was a fun try. And I made mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of good things too. And apologize to anybody who I upset along the way, but mainly you all taught me something very, very profound about myself and about the universe. And I'll leave that for the next time.
Like and subscribe so we can make more videos at home.
Like and subscribe.